Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 2018 Board of Architecture Review meeting. But before we start, our village manager is here tonight to say a few words about our new members of the board.
I feel like I'm going to the front of the class. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me an opportunity just to say hello, Happy New Year to everyone. I want to welcome Kaya Gam to the board. I am very excited to have her. She has been a staunch business in our community, and she has served for many years on the Historic Preservation Group. Brings a lot of knowledge and expertise to this board, and I'm very happy to have you as a member of the board. So welcome, Kaya.
Thank you.
Jeff Gasbro, I have also am very excited to have you as part of this board. I met you when I first came to the community as a member of the Downtown Revitalization Group. And I think that the knowledge that that group and that you particularly have for how to make our community better will really serve this board very well. So I welcome you. Thank you. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Well, welcome. So
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
Jeff may have one of the youngest members of our community.
Oh, really?
How old is your first one?
6 months.
So
Congratulations. and you've been let out of the house?
Yes.
Well, okay. By the way, this is on TV, just so you know. Okay,
a child
everyone.
can watch it.
That's right, yeah. 10 years. I can't believe you did that. But, okay, so let's begin with 49 Spring Street.
That's the B&R, do you want to consider it with,
And it's also, yeah, it's also a plant book?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take it up later, all right? So let's move along to 155 Cedar Lane. This is an applicant seeking BAR approval for the construction of a new single-family house. Oh, dear. It's all right.
Bruce Fiorito, 155 Cedar Lane. Here for application to complete a project that was started many years ago on Cedar Lane. The site work, I'm sure you've all seen the plan, the site work and everything is basically completed on drainage, walls, foundations, sewer mains, water mains. At the time, we ran probably a quarter-mile of water main for 3 houses there. Since then, the village completed the rest of the street with the water main. We ran probably close to a quarter-mile of sewer main there for 3 houses, plus now the new house Mr. Fan owns next door, hooked into it. So now we redesigned and created something that we feel meets the neighborhood, meets the market, and that's why we're here.
Has a portion of that wall been built incrementally over time since you began?
No, the
This
whole
was
thing
all
was put
new.
like in 2002, something like that. And as you can see, it hasn't moved a bit for the foundation or anything. There's drainage, there's dry wells, there's
Right.
a tremendous amount of work, completed and in good shape.
So it was begun and finished. And begun and finished as one project.
Yes, the 2 houses there.
Right.
And I kind of inherited that location.
Right.
And the house to the left of it wasn't exactly my type of building. And so now I was going to move there myself. And then the market tanked and things happened in my life that made it not feasible to move there. Meanwhile, I haven't. And we've been toying with it. This particular project, I spent probably 1.5 years doing market studies of what would go or what would sell and make sense. And as well, what's affordable. So this is a plan we came up with, which I think worked very well.
Right.
It's in line with a couple other houses there. It's kind of what we call an upside down house, where the main floor with the master bedroom, everything on the first floor, and bedrooms and another family room and things down on the bottom. And, you know, doing a market study, that particular street is more like 50 years and older crowd. It's not really a children's crowd. There's no sidewalks. There's not much yards on that street. A lot of hills and things like that. So, you know, working with, you know, different entrepreneurs and their business, we came up with, that's the market and this is what works. And having the house, this was supposed to be a mirror image of the house to the left of it. I mean, if you walked it, which I assume you did, you'll see the driveway is way over grade, it's way down in a hole. It's really to me, not a very pleasant sight. And that was the plans at the time, and this was a mirror image of it. So from day one, in fact, I have an original big house I was gonna put on for myself, and from day one, we moved the garage up top, master bedroom, everything on that one level, you know, for that market. And we took the second floor off it, the original plan had the 2 floors, and that would probably make the neighbors love it more to not block the river view from the other side. And I think it would fit in there very well.
Yeah, I vaguely remember this in its original form, believe it or not. But I thought I recalled that there was work begun on this site and then never completed, but maybe.
Right, I did it for the original owner.
Just the foundation.
Right.
The water main and all that for the original owner, and then he kind of went belly up, and that's kind of how I made a deal with him on it. And then,
So
but
you're-
all the structural work is what I did.
Foundation is there.
Foundation's
Foundation
Foundation.
and solid.
Yeah, it's just sitting on the foundation. The only thing you're changing is filling in where the garage is gonna go and popping the garage upstairs.
Right. A little extension in the front for the garage, which still meets the bounds and the boundaries. And then cantilever, because it's such a magnificent view there, instead of a deck all the way across the back, and trying to get a garage, great room, master bedroom on one floor is a big footprint, which is very difficult there. So the foundation was long but very narrow.
Right.
So then with special, kind of the helical piles and things like that, that we came up with to make a good footing for, we're gonna cantilever. Half the deck will become a master bedroom, which then will look with a sliding door down the river. Right. And the other half will be deck, so it'll walk out, the deck will walk out from the master bedroom as well as the great room. So it'll work out quite nicely.
Okay. So this is the front and rear.
Yes.
So can you take us just through quickly the finished material?
Okay, so I brought one thing, and I did get an email from Joe on this, concerning wind loads and wind speeds and things that are required now. And already ahead of the curve, and I deal with Franzosa, who's a very reputable siding guy, so I used his experience. And he came up with, he has a very long panels with, instead of siding, which usually gets tacked on, it has channels. So, and they're 29-foot panels, number one, which I'll show you. And the corner pieces also have very deep receivers in them. So the vinyl siding expands contraction at a pretty high rate in the heat, and then with the wind, it should be a very durable finish. So first with the typical corner post, but this is probably twice the depth of most corner pieces used in the industry. So that's one of the siding. The architect, you can see some is like vertical, some, I mean, we could change it up, but rather than just a bland face, some is a cedar shape type, and some is a vertical type. So the long panels comes in these, they're like a cedar shape, but there's a long track that this slides on. So rather than little nail holes, typical siding has. This could be mounted either way, but it has the ability to have this track type, which lets it move and not come off. So that's typical of that. And then, then he just gave me different samples of, this is just typical soffit material, different styles. Different styles. Here's another type that they have with the track.
So you've got,
A track and buttons in it, so it slides inside the.
so the middle section between the garage and the front door is gonna be the shape style?
Slides inside this track. Okay, then there's a very long slots to move without coming off. Pretty nice setup. And it has these little buttons, I don't know if you know the mechanics of it, but sometimes if someone puts siding on too tight, that's when it buckles, when it expands and it can't move. Because when they put siding on, the nails have to be light. Well, this has little buttons that no matter how hard you nail it, it can't over tighten. So, things like that. But that's the kind of thing we looked into between the wind and, and the site itself. So,
Two minor questions, or three minor questions. The columns underneath the gabled projection are steel, and the columns underneath the deck are wood. Are they gonna be painted to be the same material? To appear to be the same material?
These columns here, I thought he upgraded to steel.
It says steel here,
Yeah, steel.
and then wood under the deck.
Under the deck, right?
I'm just hoping or asking are you gonna paint those a dark color to match one another so that,
We can stain them or paint them.
So that's, so the question, what's the finish of the wood and, you've got railing across the deck?
Well, what I like to do is use like a really good heavy vinyl rail. I like to use things that are kind of maintenance-free because to maintain it is very difficult. Like on the deck would be Trex or a material like Trex. Underneath, obviously, but, pressure-treated material.
So we
other
have,
than, you're gonna use a finished railing system?
Yes, yes.
and so,
And a good rail is nothing worse than a deck, and especially on a site like that. It has to be.
so the columns that hold up the deck will match the columns on the railing?
Well, they're gonna be, I believe he spec'd a 6x6 steel.
You did. Well, no, underneath the deck, he's got 6x6 wood.
Okay, well, I already spoke to him about putting steel, because here, he also has the helical piles and these piers, and what I want, and I spoke to him about it, I wanna just do a grade beam right across, and probably put an extra of these, and then just tie them all together.
I think
Make
for
one good concrete beam that can't go anywhere.
I mean, from my point of view, I think all steel is the right answer.
We did one on a house for a homeowner, maybe 3 houses down, that originally was wood. And we just, probably about 5 years ago, dug footing that put all steel. It has a double deck actually, for a deck, and then it's all steel on new concrete footings.
So the other question is, as illustrative and noteworthy as these drawings are, there are two critical dimensions missing: the ridge height from, I would say, average grade, and the ridge height from the entry side, and that's for a matter of record.
Okay, I think I entered it on that,
Okay.
the worksheet, or the sheets that we filled out. I figured it out pretty close as I could.
Okay, so,
And because we changed it to 1 story, it was well below that. I think it was a 32 height max it fell well within that. And that was another advantage of doing the 1 story instead of the 2.
And there it is.
And I updated that too. There should be an updated one, but
okay. So, the materials are noted on the plan?
Yes,
Okay.
fairly
detailed, right?
Comprehensive.
Yeah, I thought, I remember.
There was an additional submittal.
I made an additional submittal from Mark Franzosa
Okay.
with materials listed on it.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? No questions from the public. Is there a motion to approve the plan?
So moved. I'll second it.
Michael, Walter, Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good news. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Okay. Evergreen, well, give Bruce a minute. Evergreen Contracting is here.
Yes.
There is one. Come back. No, it's not.
Good evening. We are seeking for Board of Architectural Review approval for the Butler.
I don't understand.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't hear you. Just your name for the record.
My name is Mark Gonzalez, partner in Evergreen with Scott Gallagher.
Okay.
I guess up here is one of the neighboring homes, and I'm going fastest around.
It's right there, or you can pass it
Well,
on.
it's a different one. This is just one of the homes that we built 2 years ago on Sherwood, and the color scheme will be identical to that.
Is that a modular?
That will be a modular.
And this one too?
Yeah, both will be modular from the same company.
Okay. So,
We already completed a, I guess, zoning approval. Zoning was already all taken care of.
You got those variances?
Yep, everything is on that.
so that variance is okay.
We had to shrink the house down a little bit, width-wise.
It's a narrow lot, a small lot.
Yeah, it's a corner lot with, and we had, I guess we were asked to face it to Watson instead of Butler.
That would make sense.
So facing it, I'm trying to remember now, facing it to Watson. And the drive, so if I compare that to this photo,
To
and
the-
the
and the-
drive is on the front, it's gonna, it's
It'll be on the
gonna
left and lower.
be up.
Next to that driveway.
So it's kind of opposite hand of this photo.
It's actually, it's the same hand, only the driveway or the garage will be on the left-hand side underneath the windows of that first floor there.
And
The
then-
front door will remain to the right
Right,
side.
okay. Which kind of, I mean, trying to remit, we don't have photos of, do you have photos of the lot?
We can go Google it again.
Ah,
That's
yes,
half
we
of
can.
it, that's half of it, Shama.
I'm trying to remember if the lot, it's sloping in
There's a
two
slope on the
directions.
side of Watson.
Okay.
The Butler is pretty lefty, and originally I wanted to face it to Butler, but I think there was a homeowner, I wasn't here for the initial meeting, who requested that it be turned to Watson, which we accommodated.
Which makes,
sense in Watson.
right, I think that's, makes sense. I'm trying to determine how much foundation, you can see how much foundation
It'll be a
is.
rock, like we had the excavator there this past week, and it's approximately 8 feet difference from the one side of, the right side of the home.
Right.
To the left side of the home, to make enough room for the driveway to be on the left.
So
So-
from the south side to the north side, basically.
I guess the north side would be the exposed side, and the south side
Yeah.
would be the,
And the
better
south side is on the Butler side.
The south side is on the, no, south side is
Yeah.
Correct,
Yes, it's
south
on
side.
Butler, that's correct. There we
Ah,
are.
see, now you can point it out.
Yeah, so our driveway will be coming in down along here, this tree will have to be removed. The driveway will be in here, and the front of the house will all face Watson.
I have a question about the fact that there's a very prominent face, which is a side face, which has 2 windows in it.
Yeah.
So if you're coming around, going down Watson, that's what you see.
Right, on the
Turning
Butler-
on
on
the
the
Butler
Butler side.
Right, so Butler, it's almost, to me, a property that has 2 fronts.
Right, and
And-
that's why originally I did want to face the front of Butler because that was the more exposed side. And then we were asked to switch it.
Is that because of an interior layout issue?
No, it was solely because of one of the neighbors.
It was at the zoning board, the
Okay.
discussion came for the zoning board, and they asked them to switch it because it fit better
Right,
for
but-
setbacks and.
But in that,
and
I'm just, it becomes, on your picture here, I'm assuming you have buildings on either side.
To
So,
on that one, yes.
right, so by taking this and then having a wall that only has 2 windows being exposed to viewing from the street, I find is a little lacking.
Again, that is, initially, I would have faced the front of Butler because it's nice and flat, and I would have
I
had a
think,
nice
I
front
think, I
porch.
think, I think the question is, no matter which way you turn it, you're gonna have essentially 2 fronts. And so
Right,
even
just
if you
the-
turn to the side, you're still gonna have 2 windows on Watson versus that.
No, right, but I think.
I think her question is,
How do
more
I,
windows, less windows,
yes.
why so few windows on the side?
I'd have to take a look at the floor plan and see.
Is there any landscaping that would mitigate that?
I'm sure we can definitely do some landscaping, there'll probably even be, I mean, depending on the owner, there's probably even some fencing that would go up along that side.
So this view here, it looks almost like a warehouse.
Yeah, I think that's actually the other side, I believe it's this side here.
Is that the south side or the
This
north
would
side?
be
What was the challenges?
technically the right side.
They're not really
Corner lot here.
Yeah, we'd have to look at the floor plan and see what the possibilities are.
South side, that's what you're gonna see. And you're gonna look at that big wall.
Yep, I agree with you, and again, I would have personally much rather have had the front being this long side.
Yeah, but given that,
And the narrow side,
Given that.
we were making accommodations for a homeowner on the street who asked us to switch it around.
I think Joe's point, though, is this house, or this particular plan, while it probably makes a lot of sense in a row of houses marching along that are in the same orientation, when it comes to a corner lot,
Right, you have to go one way or the other.
right, and so you have, as Kaya pointed out, you have 2 fronts. And it's a tough sell to select a side that's gonna have 2 windows in it.
We'd have to go back to the modular company and see what.
Well, we have the inside layout, but that's the side that has, there's a bathroom on that side and a utility room. And then the back corner would be the dining room, but that's where the kitchen, that's all, everything against that wall is the kitchen. So we have the back
I mean,
door.
windows is one thing, I mean, there's some other architectural features that you probably could think about, maybe like, batten board type thing, some
Well,
sort
pretty
of.
much that picture that we showed you, you see how we changed the color scheme up on top, like we just did one on Gates Avenue after this one.
A two-tone type thing.
Two-tone, the whole top, the peak, we did in a burgundy to match the door and the shutters, we did stone around the garage.
I mean, sometimes
we
the
broke
the rail detail or something like, sort of batten and board kind of look, I
To
mean,
break it,
something
so
to
it's
break it
not
up.
one side.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a ledger, basically, so you divide the first and the second floor,
Right.
and bring that in with the corner boards. I mean, and I think you should try to convince the client that more windows is not a bad thing.
Again, I would just have to look at the floor plan and see if we can poke more windows in there without it affecting the floor plan. But I'm not opposed to adding more windows.
So I think there's two things tonight. One is look at what you can do to, I'll use the word soften the exposure Butler's Place side now. And it's either windows or some architectural treatment or landscaping that breaks it up.
Okay. So is landscaping acceptable?
I think you have to do something that sort of makes it not feel like a wall.
Okay.
It
That's
appears,
what I'm getting out of the board.
right, and it appears the porch, as I understand it from the drawings, you're building the porch.
It comes as part of the modular, and it's just tacked on.
Where I was headed is that you could wrap that porch around the corner
Okay.
and really provide,
Yeah, but then, can't do that, because then zoning's gonna knock us down.
Right, we have to stay within a certain footprint.
6 feet.
They made us
This is
narrow
what we're
down
doing.
that, we were at originally 27 feet, yeah, we had to go down to 24 feet.
well, that's a real synchronized land use motion.
So that's why because originally, again, going back to my initially wanting the front facing Butler, there was gonna be a full porch on the front, and that would have actually pushed us past the envelope, or the setback that we were allowed to use.
But does that count as footprint, or if you say you extended the upper part and it's vaulted? I mean, would
I
that,
think just
take
because
away
it was
from
attached to
zoning?
the house, it automatically.
It adds on to
It adds on.
We went through that on Sherwood Avenue.
Front yard setback.
Okay. So we can't add anything on to that, as like I said, wraparound porch because of zoning.
If it's not attached,
What's not
Um,
then it's like a patio, right?
I mean,
Patio's on the ground.
But the patio's right on the ground, it's not gonna change the elevation.
Right.
I mean, on the, so on the lower right-hand side, we could put in a pretty big window there, because that's actually the dining room. And then on the second floor, I'm sure it's just some bedrooms that we'll probably add, some windows too also.
Susan's, I guess.
if, so, let's just share with us logistically in an effort to move this along, but to address some concerns you've heard tonight.
I agree.
So if you, I mean, clear, I'm guessing your intent was to get the modular order in queue.
Pretty much, yeah. To get
And-
everything rolling.
And then how long is that in queue?
Was it 2-3 weeks?
6, well, the foundations first, so
Right, but
the
just-
module itself, reality would be probably end of February, 1st of March.
Where I'm headed is that there potentially could be an approval, I mean, if the board so chooses, that would have some contingency to it that you would return in the interim and share your ideas about how you're gonna enhance the.
It usually takes the modular company approximately 2 weeks after we go to them with changes to come back to us with plans. These were actually stamped plans, but they're just windows, so I don't think it'll really affect it all that much. So I'm sure within 2 weeks' time, we could have different elevations to you guys showing the additional windows, so both on the first and second floor.
So why don't we do that? Why don't we do two? One is, it seems like you guys think windows are a possibility.
Although looking at the plan, I think there's
Okay,
definitely a
all
possibility.
right, so that's good news. So that and some landscaping on that side to sort of break up the wall.
Okay.
I mean, I would take all the advice you just got, because
Right.
Kai had some interesting ideas. That is a big,
No, we can landscape it, we have,
Do
there's
you need
actually a
landscaping
big,
on the plan?
okay, so, okay.
there's actually a big oak on that side of the house that we're not taking down. There's a mass-
This large
that-
group
that-
of trees will
That will
remain.
help a
That
lot.
helps.
Yeah, this large group
Yeah.
of trees, which is just one large pin oak, that'll remain, that's pretty much like the in line with the back corner of the house. Our intention is to keep that tree pretty much intact.
Okay. And it's set back from Watson. Okay, so do we think we have a plan to go forward, John?
Do you think you have a
I have a good
clear,
grasp of
you have some ideas about how?
Yeah, definitely, I mean, like I said, the windows are a no-brainer, and then we can discuss some, I guess, siding options.
Right.
That,
Some
That I would
detail
grab
enhancement,
that.
maybe the shutters, the freeze boards.
We can
whatever.
definitely, well, I could definitely bring the same shutters that are on the, gonna be on the front of the house to the right side of the house.
That would help.
So just bring something that dresses up the sides.
Okay.
Sort of like four sides. Okay, so now that we've.
Do you need landscape when I come back to you with the?
I think you can describe what it's gonna be.
Just
Either
describe.
in text or, on the drawing.
Okay,
Whatever the building department wants.
okay.
All right.
I just need a little clarification. I'm looking at the zoning worksheet. I'm not sure if I'm reading this correctly. This says lot width 7,500 feet. Is that an error or that's?
Should be 75 feet.
Yeah, that's gotta be enough.
I have probably an older worksheet.
It's a lot area is 7,500.
Yeah, that's supposed, so.
It may be 7,500
The
feet.
other one is 7,500 square feet, the lot width minimum should be 75 feet.
75.
It's just, yeah.
No, it says, I think, there's.
Yeah, it's- yeah,
This is all the
yeah.
smallest residential, so that's 50.
Yeah.
So I guess there's like
So,
75.
and then it's a livable floor area per unit, required is 850 and proposed is 2,100.
But I'm saying the zone.
Our proposed is
That's
21.
almost
Yeah.
like 2.5 times.
The code,
Well,
that's the code
one's a
minimum.
minimum
That's the code
requirement,
minimum.
the 850 is a minimum requirement.
Okay, it can be bigger.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
But
it
not
just
small.
can't, it can't be,
Not
it can't be
small.
less.
Most of those houses there are sitting on lots. Okay. So that most of those houses, especially at the bottom, are sitting on lots. They're narrow and deep.
So this is
Yeah, and that's what.
Almost matches the two that we took a picture of.
75, 48.
Okay. So let's see, is there any questions from the public?
Yes,
Yes?
yes,
Okay, come up, name for the record, please.
come up.
Yeah, you have to get to the microphone so the world can hear you.
The world's gonna hear me. I don't usually have trouble with the world hearing me.
Yeah, but
You want me to
get
go-
hand motions from the
You
back.
want me to go there?
Please.
Okay.
It's a new arrangement here.
Thank you. I know, lots of changes. I'm Lori Lee Dixon, 13 Watson, the White House, the first house that he showed, the White House, that's mine. It's 2 properties away from this Watson, downhill. First of all, I found out about this meeting by accident this afternoon when I spoke to my neighbor, the direct adjacent, so I'm not sure what happened with that, but I just want you to know there are other neighbors that may be interested in hearing some more about this, and we'll do what we can to let them know that the meeting's gonna be held over and give them the date, but no one that we know of got notice, so.
We emailed everybody a certified return receipt 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we're having trouble with that post office, so.
Yeah, I mean, Lynn there has all the copies
Yeah.
of our mailing.
The second thing is since the fire and the house has been demolished, there's an extreme increase in the sheeting of the stormwater that comes off of Butler, straight down the hill, across the backyards of the Dooleys next to me, my house, and then the house below me, the Morrisseys. And I wondered if there was any particular attention being paid to how to handle the stormwater as it's flowing, because it truly does flow through that empty lot at the moment. And I understand the infrastructure will slow that down and that kind of thing, but we are adding some impervious surfaces, so I just wondered about stormwater management. And the other thing that we wanted addressed, and you did, was that we clearly are concerned about that pin oak. So it was very good to hear that that's going to stay, because it's a beautiful specimen tree, and the prior owner of the property actually hired a tree company, and it's been tended and maintained as scabling, and so that's great. So those were my 3 comments, so 3, thanks.
Can I address the drainage?
So that would be good. But just be clear that be on the scope of the BAR, but since the question was asked.
Sure, I can easily answer that. So the lava with the house installed will be somewhat leveled out. The right-hand side will be more actually sloped back towards Butler with a slight grade, and there will be obviously dry wells installed for the footing drain.
So we have zero discharge, right, in Oxford?
Yeah,
Okay.
We're putting in a Coltech system.
yeah, that's the drywall,
They made us put it in, that's in the.
and that's on the plan.
Okay. Okay, we'll keep it
Just
and-
for the record, it was mailed.
okay. So it's lost in the,
And there was
Postal have-
one.
Believe it or not,
there
we
was
only got one return copy.
One green card, but it was, delivered on the 16th,
okay.
so that was.
All right,
So,
so
let me circle back to one thing, I
you
apologize.
can't yet.
So, oh, I
We
can't.
have to get the rest of the
Okay.
neighbors. Any other neighbors want to speak? No? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Hi, Levani Dooley, 15 Watson, so I'm right there. So my biggest concern is, I guess, the placement of the actual construction or structure on the lot itself. As I understand it, the original property or structure that was on the property was extremely close to our house, and when it burned to the ground, it actually caused structural damage to that side of the house, and was kind of prohibited the fire department from being able to really manage the fire because there was so much heat between the two properties. So that's my biggest concern is where actually on the lot the house is going to be placed.
10 feet from the property, from your property.
I think it's actually 12.
Okay.
Oh, you're right, I'm sorry. So
Oh.
12 yeah, so we'll be 10 foot from the property line forward.
Okay, perfect.
From your line, not your house. from the
Not from
line.
your house, but so I don't know, I'm not sure what
I
exactly
think,
it is from
yeah,
your.
that's like 5 feet, I think.
Probably should be 8 to 10. Should be
Okay,
8, yeah.
great, okay.
So there'd be
They're
roughly 20 feet.
There were a lot of additions on that house.
And then my second question is, are you guys putting a fence up between the two properties, or?
We're probably, right now, we'll probably just end up grading everything and sodding everything. As far as fencing, that's, you know, this house is just a spec house, so kind of like everything. After that, so the back, just so you know, the doors, like the back door, will actually face not your house, but the other house.
The chips out?
Skips.
Skips.
Yes, it'll face that house, so you won't have any kind of foot traffic moving directly to the backyard, or side yard.
And just to echo Lori, I was very excited that you guys are keeping that kind of.
Yes, I mean, the one little scraggly tree on Watson
Yeah.
has gotta come out, but the pin oak, I was definitely keen on keeping that.
Yeah, because it's, I think it's
It's okay.
structural,
Nope,
I think
it's a nice
structurally,
tree.
it's structurally important to the
Okay,
hill itself.
great.
So,
All right,
sorry,
good.
thanks.
You're all answered? Okay, so, anybody else? Okay, so John,
So as a matter of record keeping, compared, you likely heard me mention the previous application was missing the ridge heights, which you've indicated.
Right.
Where the previous application excelled at providing all the material information for record, you have none.
For the materials.
Siding, the roof, the trim, the railing,
I
all of
can,
that.
again, when we resubmit, I can definitely ask the siding company, modular company to add
Right.
the detail between shutter color and siding color.
And where the previous application, if you saw, indicated as accurately as it could, how the grade was being, how the grade reflected as it ran around the perimeter of the house. I think that's an important element here, because if we go back to the beginning of the discussion, it appears that the northeast corner of that foundation is going to be
Exposed.
like 8 feet.
Right, for the drive, to
Right.
make room for the drive, the garage.
So I think this is really there needs to be an average calculation as to what the ridge height is actually gonna be based on that.
Okay.
Terrific.
okay. So there are no more questions. Is there a motion to approve the plan with all the amendments?
Yes.
You do?
I'm willing to do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so since
I
you're
will.
making a motion, please, for the record, as Lynn scribes and Jamie tries to keep up, what we expect. We're gonna expect landscaping to be shown on the plan, the topography to be shown on the plan, the adjustment of the windows, and
Any other enhancements? like shutters, et cetera.
Correct.
Um,
Now, before you mentioned that landscaping would just be a detailed description, so you want that on the plan?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you have to decide what's the best way to represent that for us. For example, you're gonna say 3-foot evergreen, I don't know, and we all know what that is.
Can I show that all on the same elevation, or do you want
You can
separate
show-
elevations, one for landscaping?
So
and
this
one
is the
for
VAR, if you put it on the site, on the site plan, that's,
Okay,
I think we can look at that.
we can do that.
And colors and material choices.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Colors are what we.
And that'll be
showed.
that photo that,
Yeah.
it'll be a beige tan house
Okay.
with.
So the goal is to put as much on a
Details,
piece
yeah.
of paper as you can, so that when stuff invariably gets lost, we have it all in one place. Okay, super. So there's a motion, is there a second? Juan is shaking his head, he put up his hand, so that's the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank
All right. So that concludes our VAR. And we'll move on to the planning board. Our first application tonight is Plateau, we're adjourned. And so we're
Until
moving right
February,
along.
until February.
15 Croton Avenue, to give some people time to leave. Any coming to Ralph Public? It's games and crutches tonight. Okay. Do you want to sit? I would manage to keep it wired.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Joseph Sargiati. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I'm here with J.B. Hernandez. He's our architect. I also have Paul Ferté with Petroselli Engineering. This is a 12-unit residential structure being proposed. It has gone through your board for a number of months, and to a point, not of approval, but of ready, I think, to move on to the next stage. And there was a referral to the zoning board of appeals. We went before the zoning board of appeals several months ago, and they said they could not act because secret was still incomplete. Then we came back to your board, and we've been working with our engineer, particularly has been working with your outside engineer, Keller Sessions, to provide as much information as they asked for. One issue was the stormwater management plan, SWIP, which we produced, generated a number of questions. Our engineer has met with and worked with Keller Sessions, and there was a report the other day from Keller Sessions indicating that they feel that based on the information that they have, that unquestionably an adequate stormwater management plan can be installed on this site. It's not been fully engineered yet. We'd like to be able to go to the zoning board of appeals to seek 4 area variances that are necessary. It's the overall area of the lot size, the lot width. Lot is too small in the zone to build anything on. In this particular case of this plan, there's a side yard setback variance requirement, because to build a building small enough to meet the requirements, the building would be unusually and impractically narrow. So to build an appropriately sized building, we need a side yard setback variance, and then there's a front yard setback variance because the building has been pulled way forward from what is otherwise required under the zone. We'd like to go before the zoning board and have them entertain these applications, and so we're here today to ask this board to bring the secret process, which was the holdup on the zoning board of appeals, to an end. I'm not sure of the exact way to do that. We're asking for a negative declaration. I think it's appropriate for a negative declaration, of course, up to your board, and we'd like to ask you for that tonight. Although I also understand that you typically like to hear from the zoning board of appeals because they are an involved agency and they haven't reported back to your board their thoughts, whether they have any thoughts on the environmental issues. So if you're not prepared to act on, or at least verbally act on, secret tonight, if you still want some response from the zoning board of appeals, then I might ask that this board send a correspondence to the zoning board of appeals and indicate that you're prepared to act at the next meeting on secret unless they provide some information why they think you shouldn't.
Okay.
We'd like to get to the end of the secret process.
So would we. Okay, so Lynn, we're satisfied that the design and the discussions will fulfill the requirements that we need.
Is there anything to add to that?
No, you guys haven't, you asked them to address traffic, they brought you back traffic counts, you guys did not ask for additional information, you seemed satisfied, you guys asked them for a lighting plan, they brought it back.
I'm pretty satisfied that for secret, we're complete.
Right.
And I think we can move on from here. We haven't yet seen the full detail of the design, but
That's site
that's to
plan.
come on the site plan.
So in that regard, if we go through the zoning board and we get the variances, then of course we'll come back and
Right.
fully engineer the drainage plan, fully lay out the plan is gonna be this plan, but in more detailed drawings so that you can hopefully grant later a final site plan approval.
So to address the Board of Zoning Appeals, since they are also involved, we are the lead agency, they've come back to us with no comments to this part of this process, except that they want the planning board to act.
Yes.
So that being said, are there any other questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public before we ask for a motion? Now, so a negative declaration accepting the comments of our engineers to mitigate the environmental findings is, I think, the way the motion should be structured.
Right, and those are technical, that they have to
Okay.
resolve those within the site plan process.
Just want to make sure
Yes.
we get in the fact that it's not a complete bill of health, that there's work to be done.
We understood that, we understand that.
And I think adding to the narrative, however that occurs, and there's still so much unique about this process. I think it's important to note, if it hasn't already been noted, and I haven't scanned back through the minutes, to clarify how much pre-design work, from a planning point of view, resulted in getting to a point for the zoning board referral. And that in that path, during that time, many, if not all, of the secret scope items that would normally be outlined at the end were covered during the process. Yeah, can you make that part of the motion, Joe?
Why we have a
We'll be
tape
planning to
recorder.
take that.
Are you testing my memory tonight? I'm pretty good at repeating. But I just want to be clear also that one of the variances that you're seeking was actually at the request of the board, of the zoning, planning board, to move the building forward. Okay. So
It's my understanding that the formal resolution is gonna come at your next meeting, because it needs to be drafted and written up, is that right? Am I correct about that? Okay. Our zoning board meeting is gonna be on in the interim, between this meeting and your next meeting, there's a zoning board meeting that we'd like to attend, it's February, I don't know.
13th.
13th. So, and they have our plans and we'd like to attend. Is it possible to give them an indication by note that before your resolution, that it is your intent to move a negative declaration at the next meeting? So that way, at least they'll feel comfortable moving forward with our application, they can entertain it.
I think that's reasonable, given that our planner and our lawyer will be there as well.
That would be great.
And they can watch the videotape.
That would be great, you know, a statement of intent so that they know you're moving forward with, on that end, and hopefully they'll be able to entertain our application.
Okay, so.
If you have any questions, thank you very much, but if you have any questions.
For me, to the board of.
I would be happy to.
Okay, it just says that they fulfill the requirements for secret.
Right.
And we will adopt it at the next. Okay.
Very good. Thank you,
All
Mr. Chairman, thank you, members of the board, appreciate it.
right. Okay, thank you.
Wow.
No,
When?
We need to take a vote. Someone needs to make a motion and vote on it.
My wife.
I don't, well, I didn't know we're gonna vote
But I have
to
more for
approve it at the next meeting.
And what?
Block.
Do you wanna make an intention?
Oh, wait.
You wanna-
As a result
you
of
wanna
certain
vote on it?
and lack of motion.
Okay.
Wait, we can't take a vote.
Thank
We
you.
have to wait for
Yeah.
I'll just put the letter together.
take a vote on our intent.
Intention.
Yeah.
Sort of like intention to be.
Stuart writing a letter
This
of
is not,
appreciation.
this is not Congress here.
It's not what?
This is not Congress.
We're not doing
Okay,
a 2-week
so-
Well,
extension.
you don't have to agree with the ZBA either.
So 11 Hudson is adjourned?
Oh, yes. That's adjourned.
My
And-
goodness. Okay, so
And
25
Terrace is also
adjourned.
adjourned.
Now, 25 North Malcolm.
They're adjourned to the next, they asked for the read the next meeting because they have their own
right.
details to resolve.
So we're moving right along to 86 South
And you,
Allen
just
Avenue.
for the note, you guys held a special meeting on December 27th to approve that negative declaration, which is why they need
Right.
additional.
Okay, now do we have 86 South Allen?
86 South Highland, you guys sent them to the zoning board, they're hanging out there because, they haven't submitted a survey to the zoning board to apply, so they're hanging out.
Adjournment, that's adjournment.
Mhm.
49 Spring Street. I'm not sure what we're doing here. Did anybody figure out whether it's setback or not?
JD, you should stay on one place.
There's a stool up there, too.
We just wanted to give you new material because you had asked us to do the elevation of the building next door. We also modified the building to show the impact of the windows next door. But we do know, just for your question, we do have an application to the zoning board for 2 variances, for parking and for the Croton Aqueduct.
And remind us about the Croton Aqueduct.
The Croton Aqueduct, it has, there's like, the Croton Aqueduct, even though it's there's a different entity that runs it, there are some municipalities like Belcory and Asani have part of the code, zoning, as part of the zoning code, I think it's 27-37, that say that we need to have a 25-foot setback.
Well, it would happen at,
But
actually.
there's an oddity to that parcel there.
Well, the real question, yes, the answer is yes. The trailway, when we looked at 173 North Highland, when it was still owned by Myers, actually, the Taconic State Park Commission wrote us a memo that said that they had to have a 25-foot buffer, I believe, for the building. Since then, I believe the lawyer for this came in with very fancy pictures.
Right.
And also could not find anything except for a statement that he called the Taconic State, and they said they know of no such requirement. So we asked that that be put in writing, so that we're sure, but since we have a local zoning requirement for a 25-foot buffer, I guess it doesn't really matter what the state thinks. However, and to answer your question, even though the aqueduct itself runs under Spring Street at that point, the aqueduct trailway runs behind the building.
Right,
okay,
that's what
That's,
And that's the designated park,
Yes,
not the aqueduct.
yeah.
So therefore, we need that buffer based on our zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
So I think we're all caught up now.
Yes.
Okay. So that's fine. So, so is this another one of these things where we should indicate to the Board of Zoning Appeals that we, accepting the variances that they should grant, that this is, we don't have any other issues with this?
Well, they're asking for a variance of that buffer
No,
requirement.
what I'm
because they
saying
don't-
is,
they
because
want
I don't wanna play bounce around. So I wanna be as clear as we can to the Board of Zoning Appeals. If they're gonna go there, because we can't act on the site plan until they get the variance. And the Board of Zoning Appeals may say, well, what are you gonna do? Right, and so I think we have to say, at the moment, aside from any as yet unknown issues, we believe that we will move forward as the plan is presented. That, I'm looking at both of you.
No, I think that's fine.
Okay. So, just want to be clear.
So their plan is presented though into the box, just so we're clear. Okay, so if that's what
As
the
is
board
every other building
On there.
that runs along there.
So are we, so we're not discussing the BR aspects of it until we know whether they can have this footprint?
Well, yeah, if the
Right.
board- if they change it, then it's gonna change.
Okay, but, so that means we're not discussing it as is.
Well, this is what what you're seeing here is as is. The
Right.
zoning board, if they don't grant the variance, will have
I
to restrict
understand,
the building.
but
Any
we,
input, I mean, I appreciate any input.
we still need to discuss it from the BR aspect, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
And we will do that tonight? Or will we wait? That's
I
not
assume
clear.
since we slid by, we would wait, but are you prepared to discuss that?
If you have any comments with the elevation, I mean, we will take any comments.
I think it's more the facade treatment that I just asked you about.
Yeah, it is, mainly. Anyway, a couple of things I have. Facade treatment, the neighboring building actually has some really great accentuation with the build-outs, and it really is pleasing to look at when you come down Spring. That's the first aspect, and the new building is very flat because you're going all the way to as far as you can, or you want to go as far as you can to the
Yeah.
property line. So we're losing some of that was pleasing to look at, and I would suggest that get changed. That is my first issue, which is really more about the aesthetics. The second issue I have is more about thinking about those people who actually now are occupying the apartments that now are gonna look into a wall. That is not what we're really here to discuss, but I'm just wondering if it's understood that, that can be construed from the renter's point of view as devaluing.
We
you
have
know.
discussed that with the owner, and we tried to give we created some indentations on the plan to give at least like between 6 and 8 feet of distance in this area where.
But they're looking into somebody else's kitchen.
Maybe. That's an interesting point. Have you misaligned the design so that you can't drop an 8-foot plank across?
Actually, do you see?
Oh, you need some.
Next page.
Watch out for OSHA.
Sorry.
Next.
Here, Jamie.
Oh, no, this is.
No, that's the old one.
yeah.
That's the old
You
one.
don't have that. So I'm trying to figure this out.
But we did align, and so we did locate added some indentation to this building, and we have no windows. We tried to eliminate the windows from the new building, so they're not looking into each other.
And can you describe to me in that inverted bay that you have there, what is a privacy window? Is it gonna be frosted glass or?
Yes, frosted glass, yeah. So we have light coming into the, I believe it's a dining area, we have a living area and dining, but we also keep the privacy.
Did you do the building next door?
No.
No. All right, so, a couple of things. That building, this is one of my favorite stories, personally, architecturally. The coarse stone coining at the corners of that building were never approved. They weren't a part of the original design. They just appeared.
Okay.
And it was never pursued with the owner. So now, it's become a pattern, and you're repeating the pattern.
Yes.
And Was that because you saw them on the building next door and you're matching the building next door?
Yes, I believe that we're gonna use the stone, we're gonna use the brick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's one.
Okay.
The other is kind of where Kaya was headed, and I think as a board, we refrain to discuss building code issues, because that's really with the building inspector and the building department. But, so I'm not expecting an answer. It's just a question that perhaps gets vetted in another place. How do the windows that you propose, and then how do the windows that exist on the northerly building comply with the state building code regarding adjacency to property?
We're working on it, yes.
So, I don't see how they do, but that's a question for another.
If you're addressing.
Yes.
Okay.
At the November meeting, you directed staff to, you guys put together an intent to meet the agency, and we sent out an intent, so we got back, it was sent out on the 14th of December. So it's past 30 days, no one who, except for the school board, had any.
They didn't want to be lead agency.
They did not want
Just to be clear.
They did not want to
Darn.
But all the others, we got several back, and several signed off, some just haven't responded at all. So you guys are in the position, if should you desire tonight to take a vote on taking lead, and if you're gonna take them, if they're gonna go to the zoning board, you would probably want to coordinate a review, which would want one of us to be lead.
Okay, good. Any other questions from the board tonight? Anybody still wait back there? No. Okay, so, if there are no other questions, is there a motion to take lead agency for this project?
I'll make the motion to take lead agency.
I thought we did that.
You voted on intent to be lead, so we haven't sent it out, so yes, in November.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We've added a
Now-
layer, Walter.
Now, so they can go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, are we doing it? What are we doing? Letter?
We can do, as we did with the prior applicant, we can basically do a letter to them. Prepare a letter for you, which essentially says that to the extent that they've come this far here, it's now back to you guys to decide if in fact you're going to grant the variances that they are seeking, and then they can come back to this one.
And the variance is going to be about parking and the buffer,
Yes. Right.
so,
Okay?
and I believe that, yep, the zoning board
All right.
chair did not object to you taking lead, so I don't think that.
Well, there you go. How's that? So we'll adjourn this for a month. All right? Good. Very good.
Well, letter of intents are trending.
That will all be fixed in the future. Okay, so moving right along, 35 Croton Avenue is
They
adjourned.
are adjourned.
Okay. And then we have 191
They are
Enterprise.
adjourned, they sent an
Adjourned.
adjournment letter.
All right.
Nice.
So-
Just within a couple of hours ago.
No wonder you're smiling over there.
What?
You had all this good news come through.
All right, so we have,
Are you adjourning to it?
Yeah, that's just what I did.
yeah.
We have some comments from DOT that were addressed, and we're waiting for the engineer to finalize,
All right.
and we will be back next one.
Isn't there an attorney, isn't there someone here to speak to me?
I think it should, we haven't submitted anything.
And signed and sealed plans
Yeah.
are going to be signed?
All right.
Okay,
So 173 is,
that's the attorney in the back.
hello?
Did you want to speak to the application tonight?
173?
Not at this time.
Okay, great.
I'm addressed on the letters I previously submitted, my prior comments, and I'm sure I'll be back here to answer some more.
Okay, great. All right, so it's adjourned. So we have 4 things left. let's do the easy one first. I need at least 4 votes. Everybody, you were here in December?
Yes.
Mike, you were here in
Yeah.
December? December, right? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minutes of December 19th?
Yes.
Can you make a motion for one?
All in favor?
All right.
What do we want to do about the minutes of the special meeting? We don't have them in front of us.
I'll have that be the next one.
Okay. So we'll adjourn the
That's very
meeting.
brief.
Okay, all in favor of the minutes? Okay.
Wait, you approved it?
Yeah, we approved
Who
it.
voted?
Everybody who approved it, Juan approved it.
For the special meeting?
No, we can't.
special meeting's not over
yet.
Okay, so, all right, so then we have the comprehensive plan discussion. I want to hold that, I think we should take this out of order. Let's, in the interest of keeping the last of our audience from doing something they'd rather do, maybe our village manager come up and talk about some of the ideas that she has for the planning board to stay busy, which will actually probably drive the possibility of work sessions. Question.
Do you,
We can do this on the record.
do you want us to just hand you a mic and you can sit
Oh,
up
she
there, or do you
just-
want to come up here?
Pull up a chair.
I'll just pull up a chair next to Kyer. So I,
Okay.
I we don't need that, I don't think.
She needs it.
Oh,
she,
Oh.
So we're really excited at the village level to be, to have a budget that allows us to do 3 things simultaneously this year. And we are hoping that the planning board will want to be part and parcel of a lot of these plans that we're setting forth for our community. The first is the update to the comprehensive plan. It has not been done for many, many years. That is typically a planning board function, to be looking at where we should be going with our community, and are the areas that we have, are they zoned properly? Are they, are we using them to the highest and best of our ability? I think that this is a golden opportunity for us to really sit down and talk about re-envisioning our community, because our community is getting older. How do we think that in the next 20 years we would like to see that transformation happen? Either a restoration of all of our historic structures, or is there areas that we would like to see something else happen? Now is the time to engage in that debate, and looking for a consultant who can come in and guide that process for us. I'm hoping that all of you are excited about looking for, looking at this plan with fresh eyes to the next 20 years. With all of the history that you have, it's a very valuable for us, because you know how this community has transformed already. And then we can kind of look ahead and see where we want to go. Because after the comprehensive plan is updated, we're going to want to update our zoning ordinances in order to support that plan, and to give the planning office more direction on where we're going. The second initiative that we're going to be undertaking.
I'm sorry, may I ask
Yes.
a question?
Yes, you may.
The search, the planning consultant search
Yes.
structure,
Mhm.
how, can you just speak to that? How is that? What are the strategies for implementing?
So the strategy is to talk with other communities that have recently done this plan, and then to go issue an RFP for services. It's going to be really important for us to determine what level of comprehensive review we want for the comprehensive plan, and that is something that I'll be looking for all of you to provide feedback. And then we would issue that RFP to agencies and consultants that do that type of updating.
You have a budget in mind?
We do. Lynn, do you remember how much
I
we
think
did?
it's 150,000.
150. So again, it's where do we want to take the comprehensive plan? So the second phase is an economic development action strategy. So I think that complements your plan very nicely, in that we need to start looking at where do we want business development? Are there other places in our community where we could be doing a better job for attracting new businesses into our community? What does our community look like? And then that's going to fit into your comprehensive plan, which is then going to lead to the zoning laws and the rules that we put in place. The third thing that we're going to be embarking on is a parking study, primarily focused on the downtown area, the waterfront area, but also looking a little bit along our corridors and in our neighborhoods. So as you talk with developers who want to come in and build a new house, who may or may not have enough parking, or a new building that may not have enough parking, we really have to have an action strategy that all of you can refer to when you make a decision on whether or not you want to provide a waiver of parking. Because if you waive parking, where are those people going to park, and what is the anticipation of that type of traffic? I think all three of those together are going to make a significant difference in how we move forward in Ossining in the coming years. And I think that I'm very excited about the opportunity to really be looking at these three things simultaneously but interconnected. And I think we can really start making some input into economic growth and development. There's some key parts of our plan that I would really like for you to debate as a board, perhaps even with the other boards in conjunction. And those are things that we're running into from a developer perspective. So depending on what we come up with our economic strategy and how that fits in with parking, are there things in our plan that we should reimagine, so to speak, and perhaps bring in some new concepts that maybe haven't been done in this community forever, but are things that we're going to need to become the community that we want to be in the future, and to make sure that the decisions that are being made today are going to give us the effective outcome that we want in 20 years. So, that's what I'm asking is your intent, your discussion on how involved you want to be as individuals, as a board. And I'm just really excited because I love to do this planning part of it. And, I've only been here 4 months, but there's so much opportunity here. But I think that it's important that everybody be on the same page and we're all kind of driving towards the same mission, and that we streamline our processes and we put a face out to the surrounding areas that say, if you're a business, this is why you should come to Ossining, or if you want to create more density housing and you want to bring in a different element of housing, here's what we're looking for, and how can we be a partner with you? So we put on our customer service face, if you will, and then we drive things in we do have a new website now, and so we want to create an economic development part of that website, and we also want to enhance the features that we have for planning and zoning and applications and review and a lot of that. So there's many of those improvements that I've done in other communities that I'm hoping that we can utilize here. But the website, knowing that businesses will shop this community before they ever set foot here is really key. And so we have to have a presence that says, this is who we are, this is what our laws are, this is what our expectations are, and here's some examples of what we're looking for. And I think that helps a site seeker to be able to say, hey, this is a great place, this is where I want to explore. So I probably threw a lot at you, and there's a lot that goes into this whole mix, but this is a great time. And so for all of you to be on this board and knowing that there's other people in our community that are very passionate about making changes and helping to advance our community, it's an exciting time for us. So that's all I have to share, and I'm just looking for some feedback.
I think that's a very good idea, because everybody has been in Ossining for a lot longer than I've been here. But even in the last 15 years or so, I've seen Ossining transform, at least demographically. But apart from that, there really has not been any growth in Ossining. That's my perspective. I don't think there's a lot of commercial activity. Something that somebody can say, you know, what is Arsenal known for or famous for? And it's famous for Sing Sing. So apart from that, you know, there's really no name to fame.
Right.
That what somebody coming to Arsenal should be looking for. So there's a total lack of any major commercial activity. And the growth of housing has been opposite, in my view. It's been here and there, but not, generally speaking, lots of housing development, which will not congest the already existing roads. So there have been some projects here and there, but I find, you know, wherever they are going to be developed, or there's a proposal to develop them, it's really going to be strain on the existing population. So orderly growth is required. I think that's the step in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
I think selecting, there are 3 to 4 critical parts in this formula on revisiting, retooling the master plan. I think selecting the planning consultant that will guide us through that process is a fairly weighted piece of that formula. So I think the art of developing the strategy for selecting the consultant or narrowing them down compared to the process of it are kind of 2 different things. So I can't overemphasize that the consultant selection part of this is very important first step.
I agree.
So Michael, did you want to?
I mean, the only thing I could probably share with is attending that Pace land use thing last month. I think the one speaker, his name doesn't come to my memory now, but I think he was tremendous. I mean, he really painted a picture of taking, you know, a limited amount of space and really, you know, supercharging that and making that being your economic engine. So if we're going to do things to that, you know, along those lines, I'm all for it. I think, like John says, we don't want to get lost in, you know, the latest and greatest study. We've been here for many years, and there's hundreds of studies collecting dust around here. We really want to do something that's really going to, you know, yield some positive results. So.
And that's what I've seen since I've been here. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of work that's been done in the past, but now we need an action strategy.
Kaya,
I'm completely on board with that, you know, also having been part of the DRWC together with Jeff. We just, and I was also part of the first comprehensive plan as not as an active writer, but as a communal member. There's been a lot going on, and there's a lot that has been left, and we just in our work, we saw that we came up with the same thoughts, same problems, same ways to have a solution. And I think that's where we didn't get stuck, but we wanted to go to the next step. Now it's time to bring the solutions to the table. And so I am very excited about this, and I can only agree with John Fry that the person, the team, the group that we find is going to be what we really focus on first before we get any, you know, high-winded ideas, because they're all there. But that is the critical part, to find the team that we really think that we can work with. And then alongside with that, I think it's a great opportunity to also bring the boards and commissions together, you know, around this. And it's something that I have always wanted to happen more, and I think there's a real opportunity for that as well.
Jeff?
Well, just kind of echoing what Kai and John said, the Downtown Redevelopment Working Committee was proposing a lot of the visioning that I think will be part of a comprehensive plan update. And a lot of the ideas that we had, for instance, charrettes to look at how the downtown can really be integrated and what that would look like for a vision for the future can be done as part of this process. So I would be interested to see how the ideas from that group that are already reflected in what you're talking about can, be incorporated further. Because I think that there was, like Kaya said, we just kept coming up to the same ideas. And so I'd really like to see a comprehensive plan leading to actual changes. And, if the zoning update is part of that, it wasn't so much a big part of that group, but I think that there's many areas of the village that the zoning needs to be updated because the lots are undersized. And the zoning board of appeals is like a mandatory pit stop for every developer. So allowing as of right development that reflects the community that we already have. So those are just some thoughts, but I think this is a great opportunity and I want to be involved.
Great. Thank you.
I think if you go up to Elmira, New York, you'll know what's wrong with that city. It's very plain. I don't really see what's wrong with Ossining. It's a busy place. There's a lot of traffic, and very few empty storefronts. So I think before we get with this consultant, we ought to have an idea of what it is we think needs to be changed.
Okay.
I think you all said it tonight, is that we've been here a while, so I know what Ossining is, but I don't think we've ever articulated it as an identity. And I think we need to do that. And I do think that we seem to have a zoning ordinance that is rather flexible, depending on who comes in to ask for what. And I think that affects the ability of the long-term plan. And I really do think that the economic study and coming up with an economic reality plan is probably the important part of this comprehensive plan. Because I think if you don't know what you have to know what we are, we have to know what we can afford and how we're going to pay forward the future. And if we keep making short-term decisions, and I think Fawn's pretty much said what's right, is that when we look at all the development we've done, what's changed? And let's look at what the good that we've got out of it. But then step back and say, did it really do what it was supposed to do? And that's going to be a hard question, because there are some constraints that we have in this community that others don't have. We've got a great river, it's a great resource, but it's also makes everything we do a half circle. So we have to work twice as hard for any real economic engine, unless we find the niches that Ossining could be good. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be fun. And so I'm glad to hear that everybody sort of signed up. That makes it a lot easier, at least to start. And I do agree that the consultant is going to have to be more of a facilitator at the beginning to figure out what it is. We've done a lot of work in the past. We've actually surveyed the community before the last comprehensive plan. And the community is very clear in some of its objectives that were essentially dismissed in the process.
Interesting.
So, so I think we have to think hard about what are our stakeholders interested in, and move from there.
To add on to that, Valerie, who was here right before, I think it was one of the last things she did before she moved on as our planner, also did another survey, 3 years ago, I think it is, her conclusion was that it was really the same conclusions that we came to as in 2009. So it just means that those issues, they're real and they're substantially here. And I think that's, so we don't need to go out and ask everybody again. We don't need to do, as John said, we don't need to put dots on a board. because we have most of it here. And I think it's also important in that, because we will get people who ask, why don't you ask us, why don't you ask us, to communicate that and say, we are using everything that you have told us in the last 15 years and beyond to come up with this. And I'm not stepping a step further.
I think that'll be an interesting debate, because I'm not exactly sure I agree. I think that there's been a significant shift in the way people think as millennials have come of age.
So then we're not asking the right questions.
So, and I'm not even sure I know what to ask.
Right.
But I think
Okay.
there's a definite shift in how people think about things.
Yep.
Having three of my own. But I'm sorry, I don't want to, John.
I
so then
only
we
have
can move
one
along.
more question, but I'll wait until everybody else.
I think you're the last question, John.
Since I think this process, this forthcoming process, is not linked to anything stacked on that table, or anything on these tables, or anything down the hall, at least on a regular basis. Let's meet downtown.
No, there you go.
Sure.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. I would like to respond to Mr. Ludlow, though. I don't think that anything's wrong with this community. I think it's a phenomenal community. I love the history. I love the quaint little downtown. I love the fact that our streets are narrow and cumbersome. I just want to enhance it. So I hope you don't look at this as something that we're going to rebuild, because I think that what you have, we just need to enhance
I don't know how
and
to
celebrate.
look at it. I don't have a faintest idea how to look at it. I really don't know what it means when we talk about enhancing the community. I really don't get it.
Okay.
If I may add a little comment there, kind of, it kind of mixes everything up. So apart from, like, as I was mentioning, like, it has evolved, it has changed a lot. So, we do need to have a vision of what Ossining should look like, but it's important to see what is the need of the community. So there's a total shift in demographics. You have more kids in the schools than the number of houses. So there is too much of congestion in certain areas. People multi-uniting, subdividing houses. So need for affordable housing and increase the tax base of Ossining, so that you have as many number of units, as many number of families living within the house. So the number of streets, 10 years ago, there was hardly any cars on the streets. Now you have like 4 to 6 cars in front of each house. You have a single family house, how can you have like 6 cars in front of that house? You have people with garages, cars in the garage and cars in the driveway, all full. So why is that happening? So we need to look at the needs of the community, the kind of people or the demographics of people that live in this community. What are their needs? And that's the only way, we can probably change things for better. So just having a vision for ourselves, but, there's a definite shift in people who live here. So kind of we have to encompass everything. And the school taxes continue to increase because number of kids are there more, but housing units has not changed. So where do these people live?
So I think we got the gist of tonight, sort of laying the groundwork. But we have one more thing to do tonight.
Sure.
2 things to do, actually. But, so, I think you got the idea, you signed up, and the debates that we're having now, I think, are only the beginning of those debates. So thank you to the village manager for coming and sharing that, and asking us to lead the party. So which sort of sets the tone for work sessions, which I think we will be doing. But we'll need to scrum together soon to figure out how we want to start the first part of this process. So let's talk about how we want to lay that out.
Great.
Okay? Thank you. Okay, so that said, The village board, we have to do, we have one more piece of business that we have to do. 36 Snowden Avenue has requested an extension of their conditional use approval. This is the one that adjoins property on 5 Matilda Street. This guy seems to be in and out of the service. And so, but the question that I have is, in the last sentence, he would really appreciate it if he could once again give another one-year extension. I don't know how many extensions of conditional uses. It was in my package from Joe.
I haven't seen that.
So I don't know if we've given him a one-year extension, and I don't know how many extensions you can get on a conditional use. I know on the site plan you only get 2. Okay, so we need to deal with that.
We need to take a vote on plateau for extending the.
And then, that's right, and so we need to extend the review period for plateau. We extended it, I think, to November
30th.
30th, and we,
Then they adjourned in December.
Right.
And we should adjourn in December.
and so we should, we need a
A well-oiled machine.
We should
In
extend
the
it
March.
to, who was it? Plateau. Didn't go. So why don't we, let's not, we should do, if we're gonna do it, we should do it to June. Because I don't wanna be back here again going over this thing, but I think we're getting to the point now where there's some actual forward movement. We're getting data that sort of bridges the old environmental documents to where we are today, which should make our life and their life a lot simpler to move forward. So
You concur with that, Counselor?
We got that comparison document.
Yes.
Makes,
6:22 last night.
So we're getting there. So we're getting there. And I'd just like to see us keep that moving. So if we can make a motion, if we do it into March, we're gonna be back. I just don't see 2 months as completely closing this thing up. So let's do, if you're all okay with
June 30th.
June 30th?
June 30th, is there a motion to extend?
Yeah, I'll move that, I think it makes sense.
Walter,
I'll second it.
Michael, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So that takes care of that.
Did Kaya and Josh, is that, was disseminated electronically?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, the one,
Okay.
you got
Just
it.
making sure.
Yeah, we got it last time.
Yeah.
Okay.
The hard copy, we're still waiting hard copy.
So we're good. Okay, we're good on that. We don't know what to do. I think we should, I think we should approve this extension if the code allows us to. But let's find out. Okay, so, while you guys work that over, let's talk about Snowden Woods.
Mr. Ariel?
So Joe, as you know, we have junior members of the board, so we asked you to come tonight to sort of give a quick overview of what your client plans to do.
Sure. Thank you very much for the opportunity and welcome to the board. So my name is Joe Ariel. I am the principal of my firm, the Ariel Law Firm. I represent the applicant in this matter. The applicant is a family-owned business that's been in the village for, how long, Steve?
Over 50 years.
Over 50 years, owns numerous properties, in fact, has done work for the village in the past. I apologize if I fidget. I recently had some minor surgery and I'm actually extremely uncomfortable. Anyway.
You can pace around the table.
I may, and I don't
Laps
want it to
around.
be any reflection of
We're
my
set up for
character.
that.
Anyway, this is a property on Snowden Ave. It is behind the existing firehouse there on Snowden. The proposal is to construct a 198-unit mixed income development, primarily market rate. But part of our proposal is to allow for the increased density, and this is a conservation district, the zone that this is in, is there's been a proposal for zone text amendments that would require, as a linchpin of this increased density, honoring the conservation purposes of the zone by showing that you can maintain and increase the conserved area of the property beyond that which is required in the district now and that which is required by the code. The other gateway principle is you have to provide more than the 10% affordable housing. You were just mentioning the need for a more complete demographic mix in the village. This proposal would require 15% of those 198 units to be affordable. And we're working with the village on exactly what that mix should look like. We'll be talking with the village board about that, with your housing professionals, and with you about what that bedroom count mix should look like, both in the market rate and the affordable. But it's primarily 1s and 2 bedrooms. Part of the proposal would be to realign the entry to make for a better and improved entry point off Snowden Ave to the development and also to the firehouse, and to provide a new firehouse, which would be developed pursuant to a land development agreement, what we would work out with the village, something which the village has done before in other projects for parking garages and other public purposes. That again is one of the principal gateway provisions of the proposed new zone, so that this doesn't become some kind of floodgate trigger for this increased density. In other words, in order to show that you can increase the density and do it right, you have to honor the conservation zone by showing that you can conserve even more of the land than is typically required. You have to provide more affordable housing as a community benefit, and you have to provide an off-site benefit, a significant material off-site benefit that can be documented in terms of dollars and cents. In other words, it has to be an improvement, not just a benefit. So it's not about putting up art, although we will do that, and that's a great thing, and many provisions of your code allow for that kind of public improvement. This is about an actual tangible public benefit that someone, in order to qualify for this zone, would have to comply with. Needless to say, we would not have come into the board with the application, to either of the boards, with the application if we didn't think the site could be properly engineered. In fact, although it is a significant density, it actually comports with numerous projects that have recently been approved by the board over the last couple of years, and their densities, and is lower than some, while still providing those public benefits and that increased conservation area. I do want to also emphasize the point that the conservation area that's being preserved is not, as you sometimes see, a proposal where the developer says, look how much of the land I'm keeping undeveloped, and wants credit for it, when in fact, when you dig a little deeper, you find out that that land can't really be developed. In this case, it absolutely can. So we've tried to be respectful of the site, respectful of the village. We've met with the school district and have another meeting coming up with them next week. We do believe, again, that the site can be properly engineered, properly parked, and actually quite beautiful. And the other thing to note, there's been consistent presence by neighbors along the neighboring roadway, which we expected and which is good. As part of the public process, we have no problem with it. We've reached out to them and hope that we'll be meeting with them face to face as well. I do want to make the point that when you see this project, as we come before you over the next 12 months, when you see how this property lays out, how the project is laid out, I think you and the neighbors will get some comfort from the reason we think it can be designed the way it can be designed. The topography is such that it dips significantly once you get into the site, so that the density is absorbed in large part by the proposed height, and still leaves a lot of green space and open area, a lot of distance between this property and other neighboring properties, including that road. where some of the neighbors have concerns, and we will show visual impact studies that I think are, and of course you'll go out and see the site. I think frankly, to the extent they see the development at all, they'll see just glimpses of a very pretty architecture nestled in this wooded area. And so that's generally the design. The process is, and Stuart, of course, will correct me if I get something wrong. This is the zone text amendment is related to a specific application, which of course is not unusual. That happens all the time. When it's done that way, it is required by law that both the proposal, the specific proposal, and the larger context zone text amendment be considered at the same time, lest you run afoul of segmentation requirements. So you're not allowed to segment, and I apologize if you're familiar with this concept, but you're not allowed to segment environmental review so that you can turn one project into two by way of making each one look like it has less impacts and therefore avoid a certain level of scrutiny. So you do them together. Now, the truth is that when we walked in the door, we acknowledged that this was an important project, a big project, and we acknowledged coming in the door that we would do a full EIS. So the level of environmental review that we expected for the project has never changed really, but we've been very open door about that and transparent about our expectations for that environmental review. So what happens is, the zone text amendment has been submitted to the village board, and you will comment on that as well. In my experience, what typically has happened is the project gets reviewed along planning and zoning and SECRA lines concurrently. We go to the village board, work through the zone text amendments, we come to you, talk about the plan, talk about the zone text amendments, whatever you want, and at some point where you are comfortable, you'll make a recommendation on the zoning, and that's probably some distance away, just so you're clear. Like, we're not pressing for immediate action here. This is we view it as a slow and steady wins the race sort of process, right? Where you get a full review of the application and all its impacts, both the zone text and the specific application. And then it's like dominoes. Once you develop a certain comfort with the project, with the application overall, you do your recommendation on the zoning, the village board adopts the zoning. Of course, nothing can be approved in terms of the plan until you do that. It goes back to the planning board. By then you've done essentially your entire review and you do your approvals there. So that tends to happen within months, a few months, once you've done your review. If there are particular tweaks to that, again, I'm not forcing any of that. All I really mean to impart to you on that is we are at the very beginning of an environmental impact review on the specific project and the zone text amendments. We're certain that you have heard, as members of this board, as members of the public, certain concerns about the project. Some of them, in our view, are entirely unfounded. That's okay. We haven't had a chance to really develop our project yet, but that's what the EIS is for. And that's what we're working on now. So the next time you see us in a formal way will be when we submit our draft environmental impact statement. And that's when you'll start the public hearing process on the DEIS. And you're familiar with this process. The village board has taken on lead agency status, but you obviously are an involved agency. And so that is the nature of the process. And we are, as I said at the very beginning of it, we are at your service. We will be on any agenda you like to update you, and we will try to get back to you even if you don't ask, just to keep you apprised of where we are in the process.
So this text amendment, as I understand it, this project overlays at least two zones. So the text amendment is sort of floating on top of these two zones now. So if we're gonna look at a text amendment, we don't just look at this particular.
That's correct.
You would need to come and establish to us how this would work on those zones as well.
That's right. That's right.
And those other parcels, I should say.
That's right.
Okay.
And so the concept, Mr. Chairman, for the benefit of other board members, is that it's not a zoning change to a district. It is creating an overlay that in certain districts under certain circumstances that I outlined before, it could be applied. So that's the concept, and that way it doesn't just open the door, as I said, to, any parcel of land in any of those zones. And I will also say that as we have heard the comments of the public and of the village board, when we come back in with the DEIS, it's possible that the zone text amendment itself might have been tweaked in response to some of what we're hearing as feedback. But yes, Mr. Chairman, you've got that correct, generally speaking.
Yeah, not that it really matters here tonight, not that there's gonna be deep discussion, nor should there be. I mean, it's a curious notion that you're suggesting, or you're really stating, but you're suggesting, at a minimum, you're suggesting, that not hitching the application to the zone text amendment process as an administrative process potentially runs afoul of segmentation. That, I'm not sure, I personally agree with that. I'm not sure it really matters, frankly, where we are in the sequence of this process. And I'm not sure why you would frame the picture that way. But it's a peculiar note. I find it to be a peculiar notion. One I'm not familiar with.
Sure. Well, all I will say on that point is, I have advised boards and been on the private side throughout my career. The one caveat that I think makes that true, but I promise you I will defer to you've got counsel as well, and we're not gonna try to thwart the village and how it wants to approach it, right? But because the zone text amendment was proposed by the applicant for this parcel, they become, see, usually, I shouldn't say usually, that's unfair to all developers. There is a concern that if you didn't do it that way, like just in terms of public policy and the way the case law has figured this out, if you didn't do it that way, people might propose these zone text amendments knowing that it's what they want 7 months from now, right?
Or
try to keep that quiet, so to speak, and get it approved, and now come in with their big development that suddenly is as of right, and nobody really saw that coming. So
or
that,
the root of the zone text change theory and implementation was a mechanism for the municipalities, whether they're in New York State or other similar legal structure states, to anticipate what they would like to see happen as a forward-thinking notion.
yeah.
And then utilize that as a mechanism to pursue and attract activating certain parts.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think that's the true historical nature of zone tech, but it's found its way
Yeah.
in another, driving in
Right.
another lane,
Right.
and we're in that lane today. But I don't know that I agree that it's somehow linked to avoid segmentation.
Well, I will say that those purposes are not mutually exclusive, in that even considering them together, I would agree that the idea is your opportunity to shape the zone text amendment, it is obviously also has impacts on the development itself. And that's why I think it makes, even if it's not legally required, I think it makes some sense to do them concurrently. And frankly, the only bar to doing that in any event is if the applicant, which sometimes applicants will try to do, were holding you to some kind of requirement on the timeline. We're not gonna do, I mean, we're happy to let the process play out as it seems best to you. So again, I don't wanna go too far in sort of staking the claim on it.
I appreciate the notion, and I think suggesting that there is a positive and productive path to link that
Yeah.
is a better way to state it, other than, if you
Fair.
don't do it this way, you're in danger
Yeah.
of
Fair.
segmentation.
Right.
And not that I'm suggesting that seems suspect.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the board?
No.
Obviously, we should figure out how to kick this off. At a work session.
If only we.
Only at work sessions.
How's that work session catering budget look?
Well, just to amend, to add to your comments, so
I'll find something.
the Board of Trustees held a scoping session on December 13th, and the applicant has already extended the amount of time to issue the final scope. So there's a draft scope on the table, and the time is March 8th that they've extended it to. So the planning board never responded to the referral from the Board of Trustees. So if the board as a board wishes to edit or comment on the draft scope,
I'm sorry, say, what was the first, what was the first statement?
which one?
So the 13th of December, the village board held the scoping session.
No, I got that.
Okay, and this is the document we
Right.
have.
We
Got
haven't
that.
here yet.
And the planning board has to date not chosen to make any comments on this.
As a board.
As
What
a-
we asked, or at least I asked, what was the anticipated path and process for that?
The-
I asked, you were here,
the-
you were both here.
We were both here. If there was anything that this board wanted to include, because we have it until March the 8th, for the final scoping document, if, as this board in a meeting, as a work session, would want to have some discussion which could be communicated to applicant and applicant's counsel. We've gotten a few comments, which we've gotten from both governmental agencies and private individuals in the area. And we did have people who testified at the scoping session as well, who came in and said things. But if this board, upon reviewing this, wants to make any comments as a board, it's there.
And if,
That's kind of what I asked. How did you anticipate?
I thought it would come, if the board itself, this would be as the planning board, either as a resolution or as a communication of some sort, which would come, from this board to essentially basically the village board, because village board would be lead to say, these are comments that we have, and we would just communicate.
So I think, to the extent that, we should probably take this up at the next meeting. But I think the idea of where else this would apply is not, I don't see it addressed anyplace in here. The second thing, I think, based on the earlier discussion with the village manager, there's another piece, right, that talks about, I know, Joe, you described it in general terms of, we get public benefit from that, but that's but what's the long other impact? So what would we expect to get from this increased density in terms of economic viability that we wouldn't get, for example, if it was all S-125 and we had houses down there that were worth, $850,000 and, how would, some analysis that says, what happened to do it, to leave it the way it is?
yes, that's an excellent point. It would be addressed but I'll take note of your particular suggestion as part of this. I'm sure there's a section in there, as is required in all EISs, to examine alternatives. And one of the alternatives is typically, what if you don't do this? And any others that you suggest, by the way.
But that's right. But generally, that says, this is what's gonna happen because I'm gonna put 50 single-family houses in. But what I'm asking is more to the point of the economic, the economic value of doing one versus.
What are the outcomes, yes, for the village?
And then you can do some analysis from others that are similar, as you pointed out.
Yes.
That says, this is the experience that's occurred when we built it.
Yeah.
So this has changed that.
Great, that's a great point.
And because I don't, and then, addressing also what type of development this will be. Because one of the things that the planning board never gets involved with, but increasingly our assessor tells us we should, is what type of development is this gonna wind up being, right? Is it a fee simple, is it a PUD, is it a condo, is it
Right.
rentals? Because they all have very different impacts on our assessments
Yes.
and tax revenue.
Absolutely.
And we never address that, but I think now it's something that is gonna be part of everything. Maybe, I don't know. Our boss.
There are different fiscal impacts, and thank you, we will address that. And you know, for just, so you're clear, please forgive me if I'm telling you things you already know, and I'm sure frankly that you do. I know that you're familiar with the secret process. But maybe perhaps for the benefit of the new members as well, the scoping document that you're looking at is essentially like a table of contents for the EIS. It is by no means the last opportunity either this board or the public gets to actually comment on the project or even make and suggest changes to it. But yeah, those are two great points.
And you know, I mean, I guess you were in the room when the village manager talked about reopening the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
So this is like a, you know, at least a toe in the water of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we should be thinking about what those parameters are that we'll be thinking about as we think about this.
And I think, through the wisdom of your council and your planner, some notion of that is reflected in the scoping document as well. The idea that the comprehensive plan should be good, at least, you know, not gain an understanding of sort of the directions, et cetera, and pay attention to it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, does the board as a whole want to meet in a work session?
Yeah, I think we probably should.
We can discuss that to schedule something.
Yeah, I mean,
When did we used to do
we used to do it the Wednesday before the fourth Tuesday.
That's right.
If you
So, well, there's a reason for that, because we always meet on the fourth Tuesday, but sometimes the fourth Wednesday comes before the fourth Tuesday.
That's agreed.
So you can't say the third Wednesday. So that could be it, although
The only difficulty is that we have village board
we
meetings.
have a
and
village board meeting, so our council can't be there, but, and does the board of zoning, so you meet every Wednesday. So Wednesdays are bad nights.
Wednesdays would be, unless those rare months where there's a fifth Wednesday.
So
Like
so
this
we need
month.
to meet,
There's the 30th
Well, there you go.
and the 31st. The 30th is a Tuesday, the 31st is a Wednesday.
31st, I'm out, but you can proceed without me if you want to. I don't know, are there any bad nights for,
The Tuesdays of February are bad, because the 6th is an EAC meeting and the 13th is a ZBA meeting.
Yeah, they're more often bad for me because many other planning boards are on Tuesday night.
what about a Monday?
There is the 12th that's open, or the 29th of January. The 5th is an HPC
Are
meeting.
the zoning board meetings on Mondays?
Tuesdays.
Tuesdays. Second
used to be
second Tuesday of the month.
I'm okay with the Monday.
Yeah, I'm fine with the Monday.
So Monday the
12th?
29th?
Monday the 29th or Monday the 12th? 29th of the month.
Monday, let's do Monday the 29th, because if there's snow, we pick up another one,
Oh, okay.
all right?
Got it.
For a work session? on
Thank
that?
you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Jim.
Okay, folks, is there a motion to adjourn?
Amen.
Thank you all. I hope our two new members had a great time, and we'll come back next month.
This isn't
Actually,
trial membership?
sooner than next month.
That's right.
And I signed off on a whole bunch of.
And we're meeting here.